This is a 1962 Vox AC15. This restoration has been an awful lot of work. The owner had caps made that say radio spares. No expense spared, trying to leave everything as original as possible. That's the original transformer with the period correct melted wax coming out of it. Getting these 1 watts for the screen resistors was a lot of fun. And also use 1 watts for the grids. In this case, the 1 watts for the grids were just because of the lead length, not because of any wattage considerations. But I had to go through quite a few new old stock ones to find ones that were good. You'll notice these 2 modern resistors here. I disconnected the heater ground on one of the preamp tubes and put in these 200 ohm half-watt resistors to balance the heaters to the cathode, which lowers noise in the amp. Let's go up here. I've got a temporary speaker cable installed. You'll notice all these large resistors, which tend to become discolored over time. Those are the original Eries, and a lot of them in the amp had been replaced with metal oxides, and a lot of them in the amp were bad. So where they were bad or period incorrect, I mostly used new old stock carbon comps. Pulled a few from some other amps. We tried getting Eries that were original to the period, but everyone we got was also bad. Erie carbon comps have not aged well. In 3 locations, the 2 plate resistors in the phase inverter and the plate resistor for the EF86 actually used a Pyre carbon film like you'd find in a Marshall. The same owner brought in a 78 Marshall to be restored, and while we were getting Pyres, we figured those are the places where this amp would be the noisiest. Let's go ahead and go with that. They're not original, but they're not far off in terms of the period. Now, again, has the radio spares labeled 88 here. I did a grounded power connection and added an internal fuse, which is very important. Let's see, I had to replace the power switch. It was bad. In stock form, this cap would have been a 500 picofarad. We decided to go with a 1 nanofarad, 1000 picofarad. That's the, this switch does tight lows or full lows. And when it was tight, it was just way too anemic. So that's a little change we decided on. Now, every coupling cap you see here has been replaced because all the original Hunt's coupling caps were bad. So I found a whole bunch of new old stock gold WEMA trophy foils. That was fun to do. All the little dog bone ceramic disc caps in here were replaced. They were pulls from another box from the period that was beyond saving. Went with some really high quality cathode bypass caps here, these electrolytics. Had to replace the volume pot. The original was long gone. And this is period correct and high quality. You'll notice an added resistor here and an added capacitor here. In stock form, this amp really wanted to oscillate at higher gain settings. So I added 220K series resistance between the wiper and the input of the phase inverter cap. And that helped an awful lot. And for the rest of it, I put a very small value cap directly across the plates of the phase inverter, like you'd find in most Marshalls. And between those 2 changes, the oscillation is gone, but nothing in the frequency response has changed in terms of the range of what we hear and comes to the speaker. It takes a lot of very careful work to work on these. These tag boards are very fragile, and a few of the tags had been damaged by previous techs, and I was able to work around that. But you can't just go in there blindly with a solder sucker because those tags will just snap. So I went in with a lot of desoldering braid, because that way I could remove old solder without stressing anything mechanically. I think I went through 2 rolls of desoldering braid. But better to spend the $15 for desoldering braid than to damage the tag boards. As you can see, I've got the tremolo hardwired to be on right now because I didn't want to have the foot switch banging around during all this work. The tremolo sounds good, and it does switch on and off without popping. So I'll be showing that in the playing videos. But I'm really proud of this work. Every original Erie is still in here, is still good, or is in a non-critical spot. The noise floor is very low. Now, interestingly, this amp, in order to have 6.3 volts on the heaters, and in order for the original bias resistor, cathode resistor in the output section to bias the tubes correctly, this amp wants to be run at 105 volts AC on the mains. So this will be used with a Variac, and that has to do with the fact that this was designed for use in the UK with 50 hertz power. So I'm sure someone will jump in if my math is slightly off, but apparently 110 volts at 50 hertz is about the same thing as 105 volts at 60 hertz, which is what we have in the States. So with the stock cathode resistor, which is actually at 130 ohms rather than the nominal 120, with 105 volts mains, this biases right at 14.5 watts. And that's right on the high side, but right where we want to be without changing an original part. The tubes in it I will show you in just a moment. Okay, it has all original iron, has some Mullard EL84s, Mullard Easy 81. The preamp tubes are variations on new old stock. Went through a whole bunch of EF86s, and I found a Telefunken that's sounding really good. This is a Motorola, I believe a Mullard in the phase inverter. So everything is very nice, and all these tubes are quiet. Original choke, original output transformer. Again, we had this cap made that says RS radio spares. That's the owner's preference. It's actually an F&T. All 3 of the caps in here that are labeled RS are F&Ts, which are very good caps. So this was an expensive kind of vanity thing, but the owner wanted it, so the owner gets it. It's got all the original knobs and jacks, and all the vintage damage. I did not do any of that. I was so paranoid about that, but nothing that came, the scratch when it came in, no scratches have been added to this. This is just real wear and tear. You can see the replaced power switch. It's not original. And if it was my amp, I would hardwire this, but the owner wanted to leave the switch as is. So, okay. And soon you will get to hear this bad boy. I suppose when I edit this, I'll probably put in a little bit of playing as a preview, but much more is to come. 2 other things I forgot to mention. Number 1, it has a hospital-grade power cable. Second of all, I still need to see if I can find a period-correct tube retainer for the EZ81. And all 3 tubes, or sockets rather, have a little bit of wiggle. And I've retensioned these sockets as much as I can. I might be able to get a little bit more out of it. But especially in a combo, that's something to keep an eye out on. If this were going to go on a world tour, I would prefer to change these sockets out. But the owner wants everything original, and I can't say that I blame him. Oh, and this chassis had a thick coating of rust and kind of baked on dust, and I've cleaned it up quite a bit without scouring anything. I've gotten the worst off, and all the visible rust that you see here has pretty much been impregnated with WD-40, which really does get down in there pretty well and will slow the rusting process. There are guys, I'm not sure if they're still in business, but there are guys out there who take these chassis all the way apart, strip everything out, and replate everything. That is a huge expense. But then the transformers wouldn't match. As you can see, the original cabinet is still in great shape, even fairly good cosmetic condition, which is unusual because the Tolex is fragile, the grill cloth is thin, it's 60-year-old cotton. But it really looks the part. I need to talk to the owner about this original leather handle because the leather is really fragile and you cannot pick up the amp by it reliably. I think there are reproductions available, so I would take this off, return the leather separately, put in a new leather handle so the thing could be picked up. It's got the original brass vents. The Tolex on the rear is not quite as in good shape as on the front. It's because they have these right angles on the rear, whereas the front, everything's got more of a curve. But the cabinet structurally is sound. This is the original shelf that the chassis bolts onto. It's in good shape. There's an old staple here in the board that was painted over at the factory. Had a water or some kind of liquid spill at some point in the past. This is the wax from the melted off the power transformer. That's fairly common. Usually you'll see a lot more than that. It's missing one screw-in washer. One screw-in washer is non-original, but mostly the amp has all the old brass hardware. It's the original foot switch for the vibrato and trim. It works fine. And this speaker, I believe the owner said it's a reconed 61 or 62, but it sounds fantastic, and I'll get in there and get all the dust off before I'm done, before I button it all up. I need to go in here and make sure that all the cabinet screws are tight. But as you will hear, it is sounding really good.